Welcome back to List to Old Format Yu-Gi-Oh! As you may have already known, based on the previous video from this one, the Edison format tournament, our point-buy tournament, has ended, and we have a lot of data to go through. So throughout the tournament, there were 84 decks total picked, not different decks, just total in general, 14 players, 4 rounds of Swiss, each with 4 decks being represented in some fashion, and there's just a lot of data to pick out from it, so let's go through it. We'll start with the Tier 1 decks. Lightsworn performing the best. Oh, by the way, these are ranked wins then losses. Lightsworn going 12-6, pretty strong, decent sample size as well. Looks to be the premier Tier 1 deck, at least in our tournament. Next, we have Vayu Turbo, though, going 7-6, which I think is just a lot of lost potential, in my opinion. Vayu Turbo is probably the strongest deck in actual Edison, or maybe the second strongest compared to Blackwings, it depends. I just think that the people playing in this tournament are not the most experienced with Edison, and that's hence the win rate. Next, we have Diva Hero, which honestly is pretty strong, so I'm a bit surprised I ended up going 6-7, but it is definitely not the best deck. Next, we have Turbo Dragon, which went undefeated 4-0. Not a high sample size, but I think only one player brought this. And, I mean, it's a tear if it pops off. If they draw Future Fusion, which I believe it was Eric who was on it, drew Future Fusion pretty consistently. This deck was also pretty much, every time he didn't play it, it was banned. So, it's pretty solid if your deck's going to win every match, you don't get it banned. Next, we have Disaster Dragon, which is... the deck's okay, it's fallen out a bit with actual Edison competitiveness, and it represents it here in this tournament. And last, we have Blackwings, which one player picked, which is ironic because it's probably the best deck in Edison, and I don't think he played it at all. He always got it banned, so what are you going to do? Go on to the Tier 2s. We have Frog Monarchs going 9-2, which is pretty substantial, honestly, and the 2 losses were on a very unexperienced Monarch player that I remember. So I'm a big Monarch player myself, so I'm happy for them. Machina Gadgets was played by a lot of people, with it being 18 total matches, and it went under average, but I think that's just a sample size issue. It's nothing major. Very solid deck. You could either win or lose most matchups, I would say, with it. Next, we have a 6-3 Hero Beat. This probably should have been a Tier 1 deck, in my opinion, but 6-3, nothing to snuff at. Pretty much everyone banned it, though, because no one likes to play against Skill Drain. Diva Zombies, another probably Tier 1 deck, going 6-4. Pretty good. It was honestly a bit uneventful. I never did anything super crazy besides one match where it really popped off. I think I made 6 synchros in one turn. Or sorry, not 6. 4 synchros in one turn, which was pretty nuts. Norlier's Dragons was the gimmicky deck, and it ended up going 6-5. It's higher than I thought it'd be. I thought it would be stopped early. Granted, I played it, but I didn't think it would really pop off this hard. We have Fairies going 6-6. Debatably another Tier 1 deck in actual Edison. Not a lot of people played it. I think it was me and 2 other people, I want to say. And going 6-6, I think, is fine. The deck is very strong if you're a very competent player, and I don't think anyone on it, including myself, is super competent with the deck yet. Takes a lot of practice. We have Quick Draw Plants, which was played a lot, as you can see, 6-10. However, it wasn't really played well, is what I would say. It's another high skill cap deck, and it did not show here. Gladiator Beasts are the... honestly, I think it's the worst performing deck of the tournament, going 5-10, which is pretty bad, honestly, especially in the finals. I won't spoil it here, but if you watch the finals, you'll know exactly what I mean. And it sucks to see, but this Glads just did not perform well at all, and I think that's also pretty representative of current Edison. A little side note, I ran a little program to make like an ELO system out of all the decks. Like, I know it doesn't work statistically because it's different pilots on each deck, but let's pretend it did. So, like, imagine you have Lightsworn with a ranking, Gladiator Beasts with a ranking, and then I ran the whole tournament through it, and Gladiator Beasts came out with the lowest ELO in the end, which is... it's just funny to me that that actually happened. I know our tournament wasn't necessarily competitive, it was a Game 1 format, but still, Glad Beasts, not the greatest. Next, we had Plant Dragons, a bit of a unique deck going 4-5. Very rarely played, I think 2 people were on it, and if the deck explodes, it does, if not, it bricks, so not much else. And last, we have Frog Combo, which is the deck I played. It went undefeated once, and then banned the rest of the tournament because no one wanted to play against it, and I cannot blame them. Now, I also forgot to bring this up, but the actual win rates of these decks, these are just averages, but 61% for Tier 1, I think that makes sense against the rest of the pool. Honestly, it probably should be higher if you played more, but that's fine. Tier 2 came out with a 57% win rate, which is also pretty solid, but nothing amazing. Now we'll go down to the Tier 3s where it drops to 43%, but expected. Alright, first we have Flameveil Sworn going 11-7. This deck was picked so much, just based on that, it should have been Tier 2. Another one probably Monster Mash. these decks overperformed in their tier by far. Like if the average is 43 and it is a 61 and 69, that's pretty big. And I know this is the average of these values, not the totals, but still, it's pretty high up there, especially Flame Velociraptor. That deck overperformed a lot in this one. Monster Mash was pretty fun. It was just standard light and dark Monster Mash. It wasn't like the machine one that I've seen recently around. It's pretty explosive. I mean, when you Magical Merchant and mill half your deck, you can't really complain. And I'll rapid fire through some of these. X-Sabers, they were fine. They were mostly played against other bad decks, though, so 3 and 4 is reasonable. Synchro Cat, I think one person played it, and they did pretty well with it. It was Roach, who had a lot of the tier 3, tier 4 decks. Six Sams were pretty uneventful. Psychics as well. Diva Flip went 1 and 4. Everyone liked this deck, just probably because it's a cool control deck, but dear God, did it not perform. And Athena was played once and got 0 and 1. And last we have the tier 4 decks, and not all of them are played, but we'll rapid fire through these. Chaos was just kind of like good stuff deck, 5 and 4, reasonable. Probably should have been a tier 3 deck. Ojamas were only from Roach, and he ended up going 3 and 7 with them. They were not the pick. However, he did play Gigaplant and went 2 and 0, so that is obviously the best deck of the format. Make sure you play Gigaplant and start buying them before the price goes up. Synchro Caster was played once and won once. Destiny and Dragoon 1 and 1. Immortal Bushi went 1 and 2, sadly. Same with Relinquished. Dark Gaia went 1 and 3. Dan went 1 and 3 with this, but I know right now there's been a lot of development in it, and Dan played a turbo list, and that doesn't seem to be optimal anymore, because the more controlling lists seem a lot better, and they even top 16 a couple Edison tournaments, so that's pretty cool. Crystal Beast, GKs, and Skull Servants were not played. I actually think GKs were banned, and so were Skull Servants at one point. And then Yubel, Kodaris, and Zombie Fairies all dropping down pretty low. And Tier 4 having an average of 39, at least between these, is pretty understandable. I mean, you can't blame it. Those are all the decks. I decided to put this section first because this is probably what most people are going to watch for, to see how each deck did. Moral of the story is play Frog Monarchs, play Lightsworn, because they seem pretty decent. Alright, if you're going to be sticking around, we're just going to go through some quick things real quick. Just going to go over the players real quick, not in depthly, just say what they got and how they did. Obviously, we'll start from the bottom. Anthony C in his first performance going 0-3, it's expected. Noel, Dan, and Mark also fell behind, sadly. Mark actually was our first tournament winner, so he was not too happy with his performance, but he also did not know the format too well. Red means that they did not top 8, by the way. I should have mentioned that first. Next we have Roach and Rick. Rick did okay, but Roach was the people's champion. He played, I think it was 5 tier 4 decks and 1 tier 3 deck, and sadly he lost on the bubble, just like he usually does in real life. It's become a meme at this point. For people that top 8'd, we have me, Chris, Adrian, and Josh. Eric actually top 4'd. We all did pretty well. I know Josh was actually pretty close to the top of the rankings when he came in, and he ended up sadly ending up in top 8 instead of top 4, but I think everyone here came pretty well off. One person was Chris, was a little unexpected, just because his record was so low. We really thought Roach would get in. It really was dependent on one match if it went to Game 5 or Game 4. We had our 3rd and 4th place matchup. So Nico ended up getting a 3rd, Eric getting 4th, and Nico actually, after all the matches were tallied, ended up going 6 and 1, actually putting him in the 2nd overall spot match win-wise over the 2nd place person, which is just kind of funny to say. In 2nd place, we had Brad, who was kind of expected. Brad's a very good player, and he plays a lot of Edison in person, so can't blame him. And lastly, we have Anthony, very good deck builder, plays Edison a lot. It is honestly unsurprising, and it's a good thing that he won the tournament. Except me, of course, but I can't win my own tournaments because it would look bad for you guys. But yeah, Anthony winning, it's pretty expected, honestly. Went 18 and 10 in games and 6 and 1 in matches. 86% is pretty wild. Same for Nico, honestly, although he ended up getting a 3rd. Just looking at these overall player stats real quick. These are just like little recaps. As you can see, this is everyone who has now played in a tournament. We have 14 total people. Actually, in the next tournament, we add a couple more, I'll say. There's a decent smattering. You could say like pretty much half the group has some kind of top in a fashion. And I don't do top 8s because some tournaments we might even just have 8 people, so it doesn't quite make sense to. But Anthony right now is the only person to have 2 tops, and we're going to see how that pans out in the next tournament, if he can continue his streak or not. But yeah, right now we have Anthony with a win in a top 4, Josh with the top 2, Nico at the top 4, or technically 3rd place, but Mark with a win, Brad with a 2nd, and Eric and Dan with top 4s as well. So maybe one day I'll get a coveted spot up here. You should see it in our little Discord. They have colored names, so they look cool. And lastly, for the players in this video, we're just going to go over this little area, which is the overall match history of everyone and how everyone's been shaping up, basically. Unsurprisingly, we have Anthony at the top. I also believe he got third place in the first tournament, so his match rate, obviously, like 75% match rate is pretty good over 12 games. Nico with a 70. Honestly, I know you don't know us in real life, of course, but kind of surprising that Nico actually has that high amount of a win rate, but good for him. He's been practicing a lot, so that's good. Josh with a 60, Mark 60, Adrian 50, and then everyone else starts to fall down a bit, but also we're lacking sample size at this point, so it's a bit harder to tell. Even I fell down to 2 and 3, so I kind of have to regain my glory in the next tournament that I play in. But yeah, these are the overall match rankings. You will see this stat here, the match losses and match wins, before every single tournament video. I have those like little screen cards you'll probably notice, and they'll always have that up here. What you won't always see, though, is the game loss and win rates, which are here too. They also pretty coincide with the match win rate. That is all I have for you today. As I told you in the end of the last video of the tournament, the next one's going to be hat format, and I'll have an announcement, hopefully in a couple days, about what we're actually going to be doing in that format. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, let me know if you like these little videos. They don't take me long to do, but I imagine most people are kind of just here to see the deck win rates, but you never know, right? So let me know what you thought, and have a good one, duelists.